The cold weather has caused difficulties and disruptions, but it's posing possibly the greatest risk to the country's homeless, particularly rough sleepers. Dublin-based homeless charity Tiglin is one of many organisations which is seeking to help the homeless, and their volunteers were out on the streets last night. We're joined now in studio by Tiglin founder and chair Aubrey McCarthy. Good morning to you.
Good morning, John.
Thank you very much for coming in. Bitingly cold in Dublin last night. In parts we're hearing it actually plunged down as far as minus 5.7 degrees. What were your volunteers reporting back?
So I heard the news this morning, minus 5.8 in Baldonnel Aerodrome. So we were out last night at Tiglin. So we operate the lighthouse in the evening along with DCM during the day. So the numbers last night were coming in for hot food and whatever, sleeping bags, toiletries, etc. But last night there was a wind chill factor as well. And so I was on the team last night. It's important to say that the DRHE has released 192 beds for the cold weather initiative, and for extreme weather there's a further 82. But some people fall through the cracks, and they're the people that we try to look after at Tiglin. Some don't feel safe in hostels, some have substance abuse, addiction issues, and others have mental health issues. So sometimes there isn't clear thinking, as in you and me would know not to sleep in a tent in this weather, but some people choose rather to remain in a tent. So last night we found people that are desensitized to the cold and they're in tents. We were with the Red Cross last night. They joined us on the walking team. So lucky we had a medic with us last night, but I was on the team and we went down a laneway and in a place where you would never think people would camp, and there was a tent there and a tent within a tent, and there was a gentleman there who had a life-threatening autoimmune disease, and he obviously wasn't in a good state, and thank God we met him and we were able to get him accommodation. So you meet people like that. If you recall, even just a few years ago on Gardner Street, we lost one of our service users, wonderful guy, 54 years of age, and he had his sleeping bag and tent, but the problem, he had loads of layers of coats on him. So people think, oh, he'll be fine. The coroner's report showed that he died of hypothermia, and hypothermia can set in. It depends on your clothing, it depends if you're wet, your health, at minus 2 degrees. So with minus 5.8 last night, you're talking about a life and death situation. So a lot of our service users, they're vulnerable, and we have to try and cater towards those vulnerabilities.
Now, you mentioned that some people, for whatever reason, do not want to take up an offer of accommodation. In that situation, what can your volunteers offer them in order to help them literally make it through the night?
The last time the cold spell, we were given 10 of these Arctic sleeping bags. But the problem is they're €300 each, and they were a lifesaver. We don't have any of those. We try to give out foil wraps, things like that you can put in a sleeping bag. But first and foremost, we try and make sure that everybody is given housing, everybody is given accommodation. But as I said, you're working with people who don't. And if you're, you saw St Andrew's Church 2 years ago, somebody died in the doorway there. So you're dealing with people who aren't perhaps thinking very clearly. So you have to probably think for them. So if somebody doesn't come in, you have to make sure that they have as much clothing, they have as much warmth. And there are little packs that we give as well that are like charcoal. Golfers use them to warm their hands. Things like that, they make a radical difference in life saving for the most vulnerable.
Now, we also know that over 3,000 international protection applicants have been left without state-provided accommodation. When your volunteers were out in the streets, did they encounter anybody who was perhaps newly arrived to this country who would fall into those categories?
On the team last night, I met a guy from Cape Verde. And a wonderful guy. English wasn't the best, and he was in a tent, but he didn't know where to go or what to do. So if you can imagine, when someone is homeless for the first time, they haven't a clue where to go for help, and they're in a very vulnerable place. So therefore, they hide away, perhaps out of shame or whatever. So you have to try and guide them. I met a wonderful Irish guy last night who actually is a construction worker from a rural part of Ireland, and he wasn't paid this Christmas, went into a hostel, paid for that, and now has run out of money. So now he's technically homeless. So it's to try and guide this chap that he has entitlements, and we will look after those entitlements. One of the things that your listeners can do is download the Rough Sleeper app. It's a wonderful DRHE, Dublin Regional Homeless Executive app, and you can report where a rough sleeper is, and that can be a lifesaver too.
Important to note the Department of Integration says that offers of accommodation were temporarily being provided to all asylum seekers being found rough sleeping through daily outreach teams. There we'll probably have to leave it. Tiglin founder and chair Aubrey McCarthy, thank you very much for coming in to us. It is 17 minutes past 8.
Thank you, Joe.